As I record this, we are in the season of Advent. Advent is a time of waiting and preparation for both the celebration of Jesus' birth at Christmas and the return of Christ at the second coming. Advent begins on the fourth Sunday before Christmas. The term Advent comes from the Latin adventus, which means coming or arrival. And it's basically the Latin translation from the original Greek word parousia from the New Testament. And so this season of Advent in the Christian calendar, it anticipates the coming of Christ from three different perspectives. Obviously, we are referring to the physical nativity in Bethlehem, the birth of the baby Jesus. We're also referring to the reception of Christ in the heart of the believer, the advent of Christ into our heart. And then the second coming of Christ, looking forward to him returning. Now, we're going to look at one of the most famous and often sung Advent hymns. And the text is by one of the most famous and prolific hymn writers of all time, Charles Wesley. We're going to be looking mainly at the music for this particular Advent hymn, but if you'd like to read more about Wesley, and I would encourage you to do so, I will include a link to a short biography of Wesley taken from the website hymnary.org. Charles Wesley wrote this Advent hymn and printed it in his Hymns for the Nativity of Our Lord, which was published in 1744. Now, like many of Wesley's hymn texts, Come Thou Long Expected Jesus alludes to one or more scripture passages in virtually every phrase. I could create an entire lecture wherein I highlight the scriptural references that are contained in the text. So, for example, stanzas 1 and 2 recall Advent prophecies in the Old Testament. Come, thou long expected Jesus, born to set thy people free. From our fears and sins release us, let us find our rest in thee. Israel's strength and consolation, hope of all the earth thou art, dear desire of every nation, joy of every longing heart. The fourth stanza is a prayer for Christ's rule in our hearts. Born thy people to deliver, born a child, and yet a king, born to reign in us forever. Now thy gracious kingdom bring. By thine own eternal Spirit, rule in all our hearts alone. By thine all-sufficient merit, raise us to thy glorious throne. What an amazing text this is. Now, in this video, we're going to concentrate on the music that is commonly associated with this text. There are actually several tunes that are used to sing this text, and they each have a separate name. That's one of the interesting things about hymns, is you have the text, which has a certain title, and the tunes, which are not always written specifically for the text. They have their own names. And so we're going to learn to play this tune, and it's one that is most often used with this text, and it's called Hyfrydol. It's a Welsh tune that was composed by a gentleman by the name of Roland Hugh Pritchard. He was born in 1811, died in 1887, and he wrote this tune in 1830 when he was only 19 years old. And it was published with about 40 of his other tunes in his children's hymnal, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it in the original language, but it's called The Singer's Friend. And it was published in 1844. Now, if you happen to pick up a hymnal and look through it, you'll find other texts that use this tune. So in our church, for example, not only do we sing Come Thou Long Expected Jesus, but we also sing a hymn called Jesus, What a Friend for Sinners. Exact same tune, but it's a different hymn. What we're going to do now is switch to the overhead camera and take a look at this famous tune and figure out some different ways to play it, examine the melody, add the chords, and we'll have some fun with this great hymn of Advent. So what you're looking at here is how this Advent hymn would appear in a regular hymnal. And so you can see that it's written out in 4-part harmony: soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And if you read notes, if you can read notes and you're classically trained, you'll be able to just play this as it is written. And that'll work. That'll be just fine. But if you're interested in making it more your own, kind of playing it in different ways, then here's what we can do. If you're not used to playing from a hymnal, you can simply find the tune. And that's usually, in fact, almost always, the soprano part. So what we're going to look at now is just the tune. All right, now you're looking at just the melody. I've taken away all the other parts. Now, what makes this a great tune is, first of all, the range is narrow. It only goes from F to C. And in fact, the whole tune, except for one note near the end, is contained within that very narrow range. This makes it very easy to sing. And so you have that opening phrase, which I just played, and then it repeats exactly, starting from our fears. Okay, so we basically have the same phrase played twice. Now we have a different phrase, a different type of melody. Instead of starting on the tonic, it now starts on the fifth. We have like a little sequence. And then it goes up. Once again, it's very natural. Your ear almost tells you what's coming up. It doesn't have any real surprises in it, but yet it's very singable. It's very beautiful. And then we have another different phrase here, starting with the text, "Dear desire of every nation." And then we have something that we haven't done before. We have all these notes on one syllable. And then the last line. So that's the tune, but now let's figure out what chords could go with it. Once again, if you were reading from the hymnal version where you got all the parts, you can follow the bass line, and that often will give you the tune. But if you can't do that or prefer not to do that, then let's use our ear to figure out what chords to play. Now, we're obviously in the key of F, and the first note of the melody is F. And so it stands to reason that the first chord should be F major. So we'll just keep using F major. We'll play an F major chord at the beginning of every measure until it doesn't work anymore. Okay, right there we know that we need to change. And since the melody note is B flat, one of the most obvious chords you could use then would be B flat. Now, on that part there, on the text Jesus, the B flat chord kind of keeps working, but we have G in the melody. And G is, of course, part of the 5 chord in the key of F. So we could play F, F, B flat, C. Now it sounds like it ought to go back to F here. Now it seems like it should change there too. So we could go back to C. And then since the next line is the same as the first, we can use the same chords. And then coming into this next part, Israel's strength and consolation. There, we seems like we need to change again. So we could go to B flat, or B flat is also part of the C7 chord. So we could go from F to C7, and then that leads us back to F, and then C7 again, and then F, C7, F, C7, F. We've been going back and forth from F to C7. Let's go to B flat. And then maybe C7 here, and then F. Now, that's a very basic chord progression that we can use. Now, we could actually add some passing chords in there. So, for example, going back to the first line, we could, instead of staying on F, go to D minor, and then the circle of fifths, if you remember, makes us want to go from D to G minor. So it would end up sounding like this. And then that leads us back to C, and then back to F. And we can do the same thing here. And then here, we can go from D minor to G minor, C7, F. And do the same thing again. Now here we can do something different. Instead of staying on F, let's try using A minor. And now following the circle of fifths, we have A in the bass, and then we can go from A minor to D minor, which leads us to G minor, which leads us, it's hard to talk and play at the same time, which leads us to C7, and then we can go from F to D minor, and then G minor, C7, which leads us back to F. Going back and forth from F to C7. And then here we can go back to F briefly, and then C7, F. So that's the basic way of playing this Advent hymn. We're basically playing the melody with just one note in the right hand and playing chords in the left hand. So I'm going to play through it all the way through using all these new chords that we've added in. G minor, C7, F, D minor, G minor, C7, F. And then you go to A minor, G minor, C7, F, D minor, whoops, G minor. And then here we go, F, C7, F, C7, F, and then B flat, and then F, C7, F. We can get a little fancier and play mostly chords with the melody on top. So here we've got lower notes in the bass now. The right hand is handling the chords and the melody. So you can voice it this way. If your left hand, you want to stretch it out, you can play an octave in the left hand. This may take a little more practice, so you may want to just try this with one hand to begin with. All right, and then you get to the middle section. So there you got to play a whole D minor 7 chord there, and then G minor, and then here you can just play the chords. Now here you can do this one of two ways. Or you can play, if you want to get fancy, and then you can add in the bass notes. And now we can add a little bit more in the left hand. You can use something very simple like this. Get to the middle section, you can even make it even a little fancier. Obviously, I am only scratching the surface when it comes to different ways to play this hymn. One final thing is, if somebody is singing the melody, you no longer have to worry about playing the melody exactly all the way through. You can do something like this. Or even simpler. Let's see how I would do it with the melody. Come thou long expected Jesus, born to set thy people free. Well, obviously, you're going to get somebody who can really sing. If you have any questions or comments, please be sure to leave those in the comment section. Any other suggestions about how you could play this hymn? I'd love to hear them. If you'd like to support my work, you can go to my Patreon. The link will be in the description. We'll look at a few more Advent hymns as we continue on through the month of December here, and I hope you will join me and we can play through these songs together. I look forward to speaking to you in the next one.